Bardock, the father of Goku, who for a long time was always up there in strange popularity with the legendary Super Saiyan Broly, Gogeta, Cooler, and all the other heavy hitters from the movie universes when it came down to the Dragon Ball fandom. Always being featured prominently in video games over many others for a long time, and even getting his own constructive stories that would make Raditz a bit jealous. He always was incredibly popular, with him getting many spin-off power-ups and crazy forms, such as him getting sent back in time from Frieza's supernova to fight Frieza's ancestor Chilled, and becoming a Super Saiyan to fight him. And I'm not joking, that's actually what literally happened. He got sent back in time and fought Frieza's ancestor as the original Super Saiyan. Or becoming a masked timeline-slaying demon henchman named Timebreaker Bardock, which used to be my old avatar, and he's gotten a lot of alternate media and attention outside of the main story, but he has almost never gotten any main timeline respect outside of one little manga panel in the Frieza saga of him battered and beaten, facing off against Frieza alone at the extinction of the Saiyan race, until now in Dragon Ball Super, with Dragon Ball Minus, Dragon Ball Super Broly, and Dragon Ball Super's manga sort of expanding what we actually know about him, especially in the manga version, where we finally can look into the soul of Bardock and what makes him tick as a person and fighter for really the first time in canon ever, and basically learning this is where Goku got those hands from. For the longest time, Bardock's main appearance and power set was from what we learned in the Bardock Father of Goku special, released all the way back in 1990. With this depiction even being the version we saw in Frieza's one-panel flashback. During this special, we learned that even though Bardock is a low-class fighter, he can take on Frieza's elites, and is notoriously noted for having a power level of approaching 10,000. This level of 10,000 is pretty much spammed in every single piece of material showing him ever since, and sort of became his like official or unofficial fandom number. Even in the more modern Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, his power level of 10,000 is noted, making him able to basically destroy Nappa and base Saiyan Saga Goku at the same time, and basically in one hit. But not enough for him to take on the likes of Prince Vegeta, and this is interesting since Nappa is considered a mid-class Saiyan in most modern material, and even an elite in some older translations. Although nowadays an Elite Saiyan only applies to King and Prince Vegeta, with it possibly applying to Gohan in some guides, and definitely, though unofficially, to Broly. This Elite concept for Nappa was amended with Vegeta being a Super Elite for most of the time, with Bardock never reaching the level of a mid-class Saiyan, which even Raditz apparently allegedly did, with Raditz being stated to move up to the level of Nappa in an interview. It is also stated Saiyans could become mid-class or upgrade depending on what they actually do or can accomplish. So Bardock having a power level of 10,000 made things sort of confusing, with whether a Saiyan's birth made them their class or their current strength, and movies such as Tree of Might, which featured Goku at a power level of over 30,000 alongside Turles, and them saying they are still low-class Saiyans, also made it more confusing back in the day. I go over all of this in my Ranking Saiyans video in much more detail, which I'm sure you guys would enjoy a lot. Regardless, this made many people question if the new Minus Bardock would actually end up being even weaker than Raditz, or being nowhere near what he was before due to the possibly updated class system, as if Raditz could move up a class and Bardock is just perpetually a low-class Saiyan, then, you know, you do the math. This leads us to the present, or the Granola arc of Dragon Ball Super, where we see Bardock face off against Gas many decades ago. So this is where my interpretation is really going to get involved here, so I will try to be as open-minded on this as possible, but Bardock is either unquantifiable in strength or very absurdly powerful for this time frame, and I'll let you guys see if you agree with my interpretation. This line of scaling in question begins in Dragon Ball Super's manga on chapter 82, which we actually don't learn until its end. Is called Bardock vs. Gas. And during this chapter we get many interesting parallels and themes of cycles and fatalism within the Dragon Ball world that we haven't really explored much before up to this point. Fate has never really been that big of a deal. Fate being the overarching force named at the start of the arc that brought all three of Goku, Vegeta, and Granola to begin with. You'll remember that in the old days that Bardock actually used to see Fate, or more specifically had the ability to see the future and was very involved with Fate and would talk about Fate. And this new canonized version of Bardock also deals with fate and cycles, but in a less literal and maybe contrived way, in which his will and desires transfer to Goku and his family, especially through the use of the Dragon Balls at the end of the arc, as controversial as it is. The first sign of this is just by the raw way Bardock fights, and in this chapter, specifically notice the uppercut he delivers to Gas, which is almost identical to Super Saiyan Goku versus Frieza. Super Saiyan Goku and Bardock have a ton of things to go into, with Super Saiyan Goku being almost the conclusion of Bardock's fate and decisions, which makes it very fitting that the hands Goku threw were symbolically similar to how actually Bardock would have fought Frieza in that same situation. During chapter 82, it's just one uppercut, but I'll go over the many more examples as they appear, and how they may apply to not just Goku, but actually Gohan as well. And perhaps something even more further and intrinsic, such as an instinct that all of Bardock's line would actually inherit if they dive deep enough into themselves. Regardless though, just Bardock throwing hands with base Gas normally actually convinces Gas that Bardock was a powerful fighter and that they were perhaps wrong that only low-class fighters were actually sent to the planet. This may be indicative that Bardock at the very least had a hidden battle prowess about him that he doesn't really care to brag about or doesn't tell anyone, or his true powers come out in life and death combat one-on-one situations that aren't normally calculable or seeable through a generic scouter reading. What's weird though is that Gas actually makes this judgment on Bardock's status very calmly, as an entire combo Bardock throws at him doesn't even damage or scratch him whatsoever, showing that Gas not only believes he is above low-class Saiyans by a high degree, but above possibly even mid-class to the point that them not even being able to scratch him doesn't shock him whatsoever. Meaning fighters such as Raditz and potentially Nappa wouldn't even damage Gas at all. In chapter 83, Bardock vs. Gas 2, Bardock throws more combos and Gas just powers up slightly, as Gas has the ability to suppress his battle power, a fact that only interests and actually excites Bardock further. It's also stated that Gas is far from full power, something that should probably be noted as probably less than even half. More akin to Frieza toying around with Goku when they first started fighting, as usually fighters at half power are more serious or threatened. Also, far from full power might be a bit of an exaggeration if you're using over half of it, or 70% or something like that. This is important as Gas was already not trying before he powered up to a state far from full power, which he thought a mid-class Saiyan couldn't even scratch. During this chapter, Bardock also shows a classic Dragon Ball resistance to forced BFR, or battlefield removal, by the 2-ball Shenron Tarambo, and Tarambo is probably weaker than Earth's Shenron, as Monaito is known to have a power level even less than King Piccolo, at least in present times, with Bardock measuring Monaito's power level to be 213 when serious. This is even less than post-time skip Saiyan Saga Kami, who many don't know actually got weaker, was at 220 in V-Jump, which made him less than 22nd and 23rd Budokai Kami, who could easily flick away while not even trying a Goku stronger than King Piccolo, who had a power level of 260. This means that characters weaker than a power level of 213, and probably even weaker than Bardock in general, can't teleport him places against his will. This is a very underestimated and under-talked about hacks that Saiyans possess that I actually quite appreciate. This would basically apply to characters, say, such as Naruto Sasuke, Uchiha as an example, where he possesses an ability where he can use his eye to teleport or switch objects with himself and another person or whatever. If you believe Sasuke is weaker than Bardock, then he could never teleport Bardock around with these Renegon eye abilities or something like that. Of course, this is only if you believe that Sasuke is weaker than Bardock, but this video is not about that. That is just an example, hypothetically. Eventually, after much more fighting and Gas getting more serious, Bardock says a Saiyan would rather die than run from an enemy. And this is exactly what Super Saiyan Goku does against Frieza on Namek, where Goku would rather defeat Frieza and then explode than just run away and fight him another day. This is an ingrained instinct that Bardock actually passed down to him, that Bardock is trying to teach the older Goku to keep in his heart, which eventually allows him to awaken his own instincts. As even in Original Z, Goku only used that level of Saiyan instinct one time, very obviously. Even though Gas is way stronger than Bardock, at least in Chapter 83, he wishes to fight him until he wins. Even Bardock getting slammed around in the scene is just like Goku getting slammed around by Grandpa Gohan, where Gas is basically using Bardock's tail to fling him around, just as Grandpa Gohan used to fling Goku around by his tail. However, unlike Goku, Bardock has trained his tail, and has honed his instinct and is a true Saiyan warrior, unlike Goku at the time. It's at this point that Gas goes berserk, super power mode, and Bardock drops one of the coldest lines in the whole series. What sort of idiot would think about anything less than victory and a life and death battle? After this happens, it is described by Gas that Bardock is in a state other than Great Ape. Something or some type of change has greatly influenced his battle power, akin to a boost or a type of transformation, which is why I called this video Instinct Bardock, as it doesn't have an official name, but it's even described by another wise combatant in the series that even has the ability to suppress his battle power, which, if you remember, Captain Ginyu being able to do that was noted as an impressive scenario, and even notes that Goku being able to do it is advanced. So Gas, with an advanced perception on the series and combatants and able to transform himself, calls it a transformation or a state other than Great Ape, or implies it to be such. So that's why I called it Instinct Bardock. You guys can call it whatever you want, Saiyan Instinct or whatever fan-made term. I think Instinct is fine. Gas also then drops this line, which is he says that he represents a limit that no Saiyan could ever surpass. This is a pretty important line and is what kind of shaped my opinion about what I'm about to get into here, as even suppressed Gas thought he could mop mid-class Saiyans, and now he's just flat out saying that no Saiyan could ever reach his level, period. On Namek, we learned that Saiyans being at a power level of around 30,000 is still within their expectations a bit of the Frieza Force, with 30,000 being considered around peak Saiyan level, or the Vegeta that kind of got squashed by Raccoon. When Saiyans start to reach a power of 40,000, it then starts to be considered absurd, and a power level of 60,000 is considered actually a level of mutant by Captain Ginyu and Jace, in which all of the Ginyu Force are considered mutants of their species that have abnormally high power levels, so 60,000 would be sort of a Ginyu Force, a mutant-esque Saiyan power level. With the narrator then saying Goku was surpassing what Saiyans were even supposed to be capable of before he even landed, with him landing with a power level of 90,000. Considering the Saiyans went extinct a long time ago, I do believe the Ginyu Force is saying 30 to 50,000 should probably be where a peak Saiyan or a peak Saiyan's potential should really be, even then that being absurd. And if Gas holds a similar belief, then he too is probably over this level, probably above the 50 through 60,000 range when rampaging or similar to. This is of course even worse if you think Gas is talking about Great Apes included, which would then of course be into the hundreds of thousands, as Saiyans can be over a level of 10,000 in base, and Great Apes canonically increase your battle power by 10 times. It's even worse when you consider some Saiyans can do it manually. They can actually create their own moons and do it. This conclusion is even further supported when you actually read into Toyotaro's statement and opinions about the strength of the Heaters and other characters before Gas and Granola wished to be the strongest in the universe, in which he compares them more to Abo and Kato from the Yo, Son Goku and His Friends Return special. Abo and Kato are commonly compared to Frieza and face off against a rusty Goten and Trunks with their multi-form techniques. The Frieza they would be being compared to is probably base Namek Frieza, who had a power level of 530,000, as Frieza being able to transform was a strange concept that really only Zarbon knew, Zarbon being one of Frieza's closest generals, who probably was told by Frieza he could transform after showing Frieza his true form himself, and this also shocks Vegeta and was clearly secret knowledge. It is implied that Captain Ginyu also was aware in the anime version at least, but you get the idea. Anyway, Toyotaro basically says he thinks the Heaters are above the likes of Nappa and them, and are more like in the range of the Ginyu Force or Abo and Kato before they wish to be the strongest in the universe. This is a pretty interesting comparison, and I think this was actually intentional when you realize that it lines up with the line of scaling I presented earlier, and while Toyotaro is talking about a post-time skip many decades later version of Gas and the Heaters, I don't think it's contradictory for Instinct Bardock or Berserk Gas to be that strong based on how they talk and how strong they are all later. Also, I do just want to say this, Toyotaro, as much as I love the guy, he does straight up just read the series to take inspiration from itself, making many cameos and many references to other parts of the series, such as Fusion Zamasu making Perfect Cell Scene, Moro taking a lot of iconography and things from his series I went over in many videos before. Toyotaro likes to reread the series and reference it, and throughout the entire Granola arc, especially at certain points, he is just straight up referencing the Namek and Frieza sagas. It is a direct parallel, especially with Bardock supposing to throw hands just like Super Saiyan Goku, which is the point. It then makes you wonder, him referencing above Nappa and being Ginyu Force level, and then saying lines that the Ginyu Force also say about Goku's power, it has to be somewhat inspired. But what do you guys actually think? I mean, it is just my opinion, but I do think that is the case. This fight that ends with Bardock doing an enraged Kamehameha Super Saiyan Goku pose on Gas, with his spirit and instinct then passing on to Goku after he uses the Dragon Balls to be unleashed to avenge their race in totality. He then even passes out from his one-handed attack just like Gohan versus Cell. Bardock has won and defeated a force that is beyond what all Saiyans are capable of. Anyways, guys, that is the current opinion I hold on the canon Bardock, I guess. When it comes into like Xeno Bardock and Timebreaker Bardock, like my avatar, that's a whole different can of worms that can get its own video. But for now, I was just kind of interested in breaking that down. I thought it was really interesting how Bardock actually has a similar fighting style to Super Saiyan Goku, and how that connection, I think, was actually intentional, as Bardock passing his instinct to Goku, and then Goku using that instinct and that will that Bardock passed down to avenge the race. And it was like more direct and literal rather than some weird, like, I can see the future, we're connected because we're father and son type thing. I actually really enjoyed that. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to look out for more of these black thumbnail Dragon Ball videos. Until next time.